this video, I'm going to show you how you can construct a planner cover using hand stitching. This can also be done using machine stitching. As you can see, I have added some decoration to the front of my cover. So that's to show you the difference between the front side and the back side. Your decoration will include lots of other techniques. It won't have just applique, it will have embroidery, tie-dye, batik, as many techniques as we have covered in this project. So the first part of construction is to add some hems. The reason why we add hems is because cotton is a woven fabric, and if it's not hemmed, the edges will fray and that doesn't look very neat. So we're going to make sure that we keep everything as neat as we can. So these edges are going to be hemmed. We're going to refer to our template. Okay, so if you have a look at the template again, you can see that at these edges there is a 1 centimetre hem. So what we are going to do is we are going to measure 1.5 centimetres in from the edges, and we're going to fold it. Now, we're not going to fold it this way because that would be not very neat. So the reason I've added this design is to show you that you need to flip this over. You need to get your ruler and some tailor's chalk, and you need to measure 1.5 centimetres. So let's have a go. Measure it here, so lining up that line with the edge of the fabric and just making a little mark here. You want a contrasting colour of tailor's chalk so that you can actually see what you're doing. I wouldn't want to pick purple here. And I have measured at the top and at the bottom, and because I've got quite a short ruler, I'm probably going to have to measure in the middle again. And then I'm going to line the ruler up with those points and make a nice mark along the edge. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, so these edges are going to get folded to the back. And what I am going to do now is I'm going to go and press it with an iron so that that crease stays in place. If you see, it hasn't been ironed at the moment and it just wants to flick back. I'm going to go and press it with an iron, add some heat to it, and that will hold that in place. So I'm going to do that on both this side and on this side, and I'll be back in a second. So as you can see, now the edges are sort of creased and they are sort of held in place. The next step will be to temporarily hold these hems in place with some pins. This will mean that it won't move about while we're trying to sew it, and that our work will be neat. Make sure that your pins are at right angles to the edge of the fabric so that it's safer to remove the pins while you are sewing with the sewing machine. So the next step is for us to hold these in place permanently with some running stitch. So for this, I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So I've picked a contrasting colour, I've picked yellow. However, the way that you're going to do this is you're going to pick a colour that matches your fabric so it doesn't show up as much. You want your work to be really neat. So I should be using a purple, but because I want you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to use a yellow. And I am going to sew as close to the edge here as I can, very neatly. And again on this side. So I'm going to sew those two edges up. So to start this off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to always start from the back. So this is the back side of your fabric. On this side you've got all your decoration. So you want to go this way through the fabric when you're sewing for your first stitch so that the knot is on the back. And then you're going to keep sewing. So for the first stitch, I am actually going to do a double stitch so that it can be a little bit stronger. Like that. And then, I don't know if you can see, there's a little stitch here, which is your double stitch. I'm just going to tie that into a knot because this is a running stitch and running stitch can come undone quite easily. So there's one knot and then double knot that. So I'm just looping underneath the stitch that I've just done and going through the loop with my needle. And now I can pull as hard as I like and that stitch won't come undone. So now I'm going to quickly do the rest of my running stitch up here. Still try to keep your stitches quite even and neat because they will be seen slightly. And when you get to your very last stitch, what you're going to do is do a double stitch at the end like you did at the start, and that will make sure that your work is very strong and it's not going to come undone. So I'm just doing a second stitch over that one. So you see I've got 2 stitches in place there. I'm going to come back to the back of the fabric again, and then through that stitch tie a little knot and through it again and tie another little knot. Whoops, I've lost my needle, but there you go. And then we can just trim that thread, and we need to do the same on the other side. So now we have both of our hems sorted. They are both sewn and attached so that the edges of our fabric are going to look really neat because they're folded over. So the next step is to refer to the template, and you can see that the pockets are these 2 panels here. So this bit is going to get folded so that these little pockets are going to hold the pages of your planner. So we need to do a bit of maths here. We need to measure the edge from the edge. That's 9.5 centimeters. However, remember you've got your 1.5 centimeter hem, so that is 9.5 minus 1.5, which is 7. So if we were to just measure from here, then you can see we've got, well, it looks like 8 there, but it should be 7 centimeters. Luckily, if you watched my previous video on how to use the template, you'll have seen I've already marked those in. So I'm going to flip this over so that we've got our decoration face up, and then this might seem a little bit back to front, but what we are going to do is we are going to fold it so it is inside out. So everything in textiles, well, most things in textiles are made inside out. Why don't you take a moment to just go and have a look through your wardrobe and have a look at the fabric of the clothes that you are wearing now. I've got a sleeve here, and you can see this, it's all sewn on the inside of that sleeve. So have a little look at how your clothes are sewn together, and you will see that it's not as crazy as it might seem to be making this inside out. So we're going to flip these 2 bits like that. There's our pocket, and now we are going to sew 1.5 centimeters in from each edge. So again, you're going to get your ruler and you are going to measure and mark those points so that you have a line to draw along, or a line to sew along. Okay. And we're going to do that on all sides, and then we're going to sew those all in place. So I'll just do the same. So now that I've drawn all of these, I'm going to sew them, but again, I'm going to use a thread that I think is going to stand out for you to see on this video so you can see what I'm doing. I would like you to pick something that's going to be very understated and it's not going to show up. So pick a matching colour for this. Don't forget to pin these in place so that your fabric doesn't move about while you sew it. Make sure that those pins are at right angles to the edge of the fabric again for safety. Okay, so I'm going to start from this edge and I'm going to work my way in, and I'm going to do the same on all of these sides. And I'm going to use a running stitch. So just make sure that you have folded it on the line that you've drawn and that you are sewing through the line that you want your hem to be on. So we're going to come up through the fabric. Because this is quite a thick thread, I'm not going to do the double stitch, but if you're using a thin thread, then you should. And I'm just going to sew neatly and evenly along that line that I have drawn. Okay, and make sure that you sew right to the edge so that this bit is secured in as well. Okay, and then I'm going to tuck through my last stitch and tie a knot so that everything stays in place. There we go, and then I can cut that off. And I can do that another 3 times.
One eternity later.
And cut off any loose threads, being careful not to cut off the knots that are holding everything in place. So you should have something that looks a little bit like this. It looks inside out and quite strange at the moment, but here is the moment of truth. You are going to unfold these and get your fingers into the corners to release one side, and you are going to do the same on the other side. Do you see how neat those edges are? So now we have our planner cover mostly. It's nearly finished now. So there's the back, there's the front, but if we have another look at the back, you can see we have these little wobbly bits at the side. So I'm going to press them so that they are folded in between the 2 points and nice and crisp. So I've pressed these 2 edges, but I've also pressed all the way around here to try and make sure that this is as crisp and sort of well folded as it can be. So I'm now going to sew from here to here and here to here to secure these in place, and I'm going to use a running stitch again. So again, I'm going to be using a colour that stands out so that you can see it, hopefully, but I would like you to use a colour that is hard to see, so something that matches the fabric that you're using again. Make sure when you are sewing that you sew down the first time so that your knot will go to the inside of the planner cover. And then continue to stitch. And to tie a knot, I'm just going to create a little loop like that, and then I'm going to pop the needle into the loop here and pull on the thread, and that controls where the knot forms. And then I'm going to do the same at the top. Make sure that you sew down first so that your knot forms on the inside. And I'm going to sew very close to the edge so that it is held in place neatly. So there you can see the top and the bottom have been sewn in place. The top is a little bit more wonky than the bottom, and I did that on purpose to show you the difference that makes. So you see, there is the top. The stitches are uneven and they are near the edge, but can you see how much that sort of shows in comparison to that one? So that one does look neater. You want to make sure that your stitches are even and close to the edge, because this will be seen and it will be on the front of your design, so you want it to be as subtle as possible. So that's how you construct your planner cover. Have fun!